If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. With that being said, hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew, and today we're back with another figure comparison, and it's going to be based on an old one we did a few years ago. Now, I know I said previously that the Destroya Playmates review would be coming soon, and yes, I have the figure with me, so it's not going anywhere. But I wanted to take a break from Godzilla for a bit and focus on Kong, since he is technically, so to speak, a different IP entirely. I mean, he was created 21 years before Godzilla, so not to mention there's separate Kong figures that are exclusive to Kong, not just Godzilla. And, Kong himself is just an overall different character to Godzilla, so why not just take another Kong rip gander? But with that said, today we have two Kong figures we're going to be taking a look at today with the Mezco Toys King Kong of Skull Island from the hit video game Skull Island Rise of Kong. Not really, it's based on the book, which is the game is also based on the book, so maybe it is from the video game, even though the figure came first. And NECA Toys' original King Kong. This is not based on any movie, this is their own unique interpretation of the King of Apes. Which, let's be honest, it's based on the 33 design. But whatever. You already know how the game is played, but if you don't, we're going to divide this into 7 categories: sculpt and paint, articulation, size, accessories, price, availability, and packaging. And right now we're judging this in 2025, so let us go ahead and round out the contenders. Also, for anyone asking, we're specifically judging these figures for sculpt and paint purely based on their neutral stance in the package. So this is how the figure came, with its hands like that and its head like that, while I have the Kong from NECA in its original stance as well. So with that said, here's the Mezco. Now what's funny to note about the Mezco Kong is that it kind of takes some inspiration from various different other Kongs to make its design. So we have eyes that are painted kind of like brown with some black pupils and white irises. And we have like a very nice facial paint going on here with more like a gray for the skin tone, and the dry brushing looks really nice. And for the fur itself, it's very detailed and very rugged. Like, that's almost how I can describe this thing. It looks very rugged and old. And I know that sounds really weird to say, but for Kong, that makes perfect sense. And we even have like a little spike, almost like a mohawk or like Jimmy Neutron style hair, and it looks really cool. The nostrils are sculpted pretty well, and the mouth could be a bit more pronounced, but it's very round, very pissed off looking, and we have the eyebrows looking pretty well done as well. We have the dry brushing looking pretty good there. And then we have like the brown paint and wash all around the body, especially like down here where it does kind of transition to the gray a little bit, and it looks really fine. Moving on down to the neck, we get more like the brown on kind of like a gray base with the brown wash, and it looks really nice. And then here for the chest, I will say the chest is a bit on the more disappointing side because it's not as, doesn't look as popish as it should be, because there's a fine line between the rugged brown and the kind of like gray of the skin patches here. But we do have some nice scarring here, a little bit there, and nothing too much going on like the abs here, because they're mostly confined to the fur. So I will say it's a bit on the side when it comes to like the gray, but it does look at least alright. But you can still make it out. Moving on down, actually let's go to the back. The back is going to be, again, very ruggedy fur looking. Looks very roughed up. Even though it's not roughed up, it looks roughed up. And I do love the way that it is sculpted and looks almost realistic. Like, that's what I like about this thing. Although, again, I will say the color variations do leave a little bit to be desired, because it is just mostly grays and browns. And going down to the shoulders here, we have more or less the same thing going on here, where we have more like the brown, dull brown and gray gray base for it as well. And the hands are mostly gray, obviously. Like, this is how I wish the pecs were. more of. Like this at least pops with the gray a little bit more, and then actually has some brown popping a little bit more. So this is how I wish it was like. But the fingernails were actually done pretty well, which I do find really nice. We have the upper legs. They look nice. Again, very ruggedy fur, older Kong, almost like, and then moving on down, carries that fur detail nicely. And we have the 5-toed feet, which look pretty snazzy on this one, and doesn't really have a whole lot to talk about, but the nails do look nice. And we even have some details at the bottom of the feet, which kind of make me question, does this guy even have any copyright info? I don't really think it does. Maybe it does, but there you go. That's like a general overview of the sculpt and paint when it comes to the Mezco Kong. And next up, we have the sculpt and paint of the NECA Kong, which again, it's its own design, and well, there's really no main direct source of inspiration. 1933. So we're gonna take a look at this. So for the head, it is actually pretty well done. And I say actually because at first glance, I didn't really like the way it was designed until I remembered the original Kong looked like this. But for the eyes, it's similar to that of the Mezco, where it's brown iris and then has the black pupils with the white eyeballs themselves. For the nostrils, I will say that there is actually some detail within the nostril, which I find really cool. And it's actually got some more of a vibrant paint scheme than that of the Mezco, which I do like. We have like the gray surrounding the face with some mild dry brushing here for the face, along with like the very big brow and the brown skin, or sorry, the fur. And then taking a look at the inside of the mouth, his lips are mostly pink, and we have some individually sculpted teeth, and they're all painted, although the painting is a little on the iffy side. That's okay. We have very nice gum detail and nice magenta pink purplish tongue in there, which is also pretty well done. We also have some nice packs here, which again is kind of how I would have liked the Mezcos to have been. And the cuts on this thing, if you remember back in my original review, I think I commented on the fact that the blood here is so realistic looking. I was almost convinced that the painter, I'm not saying he actually did this, but it looks like almost that he accidentally cut himself while he was painting this thing. And he was just like, what do I do? And then he just put his blood on the figure, then boom. I know it sounds really morbid, but it looks that realistic. And if they did that realistic, that's cool. Like, that's really cool. But moving on down, we do have like the gray on the packs with some red paint. Again, looks really nice. And we do have some more brown sculpt work, sorry, paint work for the fur. I will say that the fur is a bit on the more softer side compared to that of the Mezco, but it's not trying to be the same thing. But it does have some nice fur detail going down. Do have some like kind of like different waves in the fur, like specifically on the forearm. And then we get to like the fists, which is the neutral hands Kong comes with. And yeah, it's gray for the skin, brown fur for the fur, and it looks really nice. Going down to the well, let's talk about the back. The back's a bit iffy, honestly, because it's not pure brown. It's actually kind of mixed in with the gray, and it doesn't look all the best because it just doesn't. It looks very iffy on some parts. Because like you can see here, we have brown splotches and primarily on his butt cheeks, which no thick Kong, sadly, but we do have some gray, which is a bit on the more iffy side, and especially like this large patch of gray. You can clearly see that. Then we have brown. So the back is not as good as it could be, at least in my opinion. But the forelegs do kind of carry that same or upper legs, sorry. They kind of carry the same problem where we have brown more onto one section and then, sorry, gray onto one section and then brown onto another. But the brown, at least where there is brown, actually looks pretty well. It's snazzy, and I do like it. Kneecaps look fine. Little parakeet. I have cats, so that's why. And we do have some fur detail. Okay, what the heck? Get out of here. When I said cat interrupting, I didn't mean cat fur. Anyway, the skin here actually, again, looks pretty well done, and I do like the toenails on this thing, and they look really nice. I honestly kind of prefer it more than the Mezco in some ways, but we'll talk about that more in just a sec. And as for the bottom of the feet, we have some copyright info for NECA Toys, 2020, made in China. And yeah, that's about it for the sculpt and paint for the NECA. So for sculpt and paint, it's going to be a bit of a tough one. While they both take completely different approaches, because let's be honest, the Mezco is more rugged, it looks more older, and it has, in my personal opinion, the better details as far as the fur goes. It's not as great in the paint department as the brown and the gray just kind of mix together. And honestly, on first glance, like I'm looking at the face right now, it almost just looks barely like visible. You can see it on camera, but there's in person, it's not that big of a difference. And it's mainly confined to a wash of a brown on a pure gray base at best. But I will say again that the dry brushing is at least good for what it's trying to do, and in my personal opinion, it has the better details than the NECA. However, the NECA has the better overall paint job, and in my personal opinion, the wounds just look a lot fresher. I think it's wounds versus scars, but I think I like the freshly cut wounds on the NECA Kong more than the scars on the Mezco, which, if I prefer wounds over scars, oh boy, that's going to be taken out of context badly. But in my personal opinion, even though the details are not as solid on the NECA, I'm gonna have to go for sculpt and paint with the NECA. And the reason why is because while it does look a bit iffy like in some parts with the brown and the gray, at the very least I can tell which one's which, like on a much better glance, like first glance. And the details, while it's not as solid, are still really good in their own right. And those scarings really kind of elevate it. Although, when it comes to facial expressions, this one's goofy as all hell versus this one where it's like really serious. But even like when it comes down to the face, I think I just prefer like the facial sculpt of the NECA more than I prefer of the Mezco. So I gotta give it to the NECA. Round two, articulation. And we're gonna go right to the Mezco. For the Mezcos, we have a ball joint here at the head, so you can look up, down, our left, our right, and we can kind of swivel, although it's not really meant to since the sculpt is like at an oval shape. Swivel hinges for the shoulders, so you can rotate to your heart's content. Elbow, which can bend out about that far and about that far and can rotate, although do be mindful of the sculpt because it could rub into itself. Trying to find here, there's like a piece where it started rubbing against. Ball joint here at the wrist, which in my personal opinion is a really good ball joint. Ball jointed ab crunch, which moving this up, you can go backwards about that far. Finger. Forwards about that far. And can rotate. So this waist joint's actually really good. We can go side to side with it too. That is a really good barbell ball joint. Like that is awesome. Like a really cool sliding joint. The legs, not so much. We can go out to the side that far, in about that far, go up about that far, and backwards about that far. But we can kind of swivel in there. It's very hard to maneuver this thing, and I don't want to accidentally break the joint. We can kick at the knee, and we can rotate at the knee, and we have a ball joint here at the foot. So, in my original review of this guy, I commented how this guy feels like a NECA figure, because if you were to just take away the tail articulation, of one of their NECA Godzillas. This thing is exactly like a NECA Godzilla, almost like joint for joint, and it's really impressive. However, you know the competition. The A in the A in NECA might as well stand for articulation, even though it stands for association, because this NECA Kong stands on business. The head goes up about that far, down about that far, to his left about that far, to his right about that far, and can rotate a lot better than the Mezco can. For the shoulders, we can go up, down, forward and back. And we have bicep swivels, so you can spin those around. Elbow joints, which can go in, out, swivel. And we have a swivel hinge here at the wrist, which is a lot better movement-wise than the Mezco. And you can kind of right tell where this is going. The ab crunch, moving Kong's arms up. It's probably the same ballpark of movement, even though it's a lot more easier to move. And for the legs, they're on ratchets. So we can go in and out, like so. And we can go in and out, as so. For the knees, double jointed hinge. So we can go really far back, close in, and we can kind of swivel in there too. And the feet are, at first glance, kind of awkward because they rotate like this, but it's because the peg is at an angle, and you can kind of get it to where you can kind of pivot his foot like that and spread his legs out like this. So that kind of maximizes your display options. Hold on, can I get him into a... So, and also, one more thing to mention is that it is on a hinge. Even though you can't really get much out of the hinge, at least on mine, you can kind of go up and down with it. So that's the NECA Kong. So when we go to an overall pose off between the two Kongs, here I have them in basically the same pose with their legs spread, them beating their chest and looking up to the sky, almost as if they're like trying to intimidate maybe like a T-Rex on a mountain or something. It's kind of clear that the Mezco has a very hard time achieving the poses the NECA can, because especially in the arms and legs alone, the NECA just has way more joints, because really all you just get is two swivel hinges at the elbow and shoulder respectively for the Mezco and a ball joint at the wrist, while everything here is at least double jointed in some way, shape, or form. You have a swivel hinge here, swivel here, two swivel hinges here, and a swivel hinge here. I'm sorry, but even though it looks like the two can kind of pose, look who can get closer to the chest. Yeah, sorry, but the NECA wins. And so it is time to talk about accessories, which I would talk about size first, but we're going to get into that in just a sec. So here we have the Mezco, here we have the NECA. No action figure is truly complete without some good interchangeability, right? So let's start with the Mezco. For the Mezco, we have an alternate head sculpt, which is going to be a pissed off, roaring face, which just about takes the sculpt and paint of the head you know and hopefully love and makes it a lot more angrier. So we're going to put that right there. Next, he comes with a set of alternate fists that act as clenched fists. They have a really nice wash to them, and the brown is actually still kind of good. Their fists, really not much to say. And there is an alternate hand for his, which hands the right hand, where it's semi-grabbing, and you might be wondering what he's actually grabbing. Well, what's Kong mostly known for? Kidnapping Andaro. Yep, comes with a mini Andaro figure. So we'll set her and the alternate hand aside. And as a bonus, chain shackles. that are made from real metal and are kind of rusty. I don't know if that was intentional or not. I can't remember because I don't really take the Mezco Kong off the shelf every day. But these are actually pretty well done, and they're like real chains. Like, that is awesome. So if you want to know how to put them on, I have a separate video I'll link in the description, if I remember to. So that's the Mezco's accessories. What about NECA? Well, it's on a roll, so surely must win the point, right? Well, for its accessories, we have an alternate head sculpt, which is technically, so to speak, an alternate design, because here we have this face, and here we have this face. It is a duller paint scheme with different eyes and different teeth arrangement, because they're a lot bigger. See the canine on the alternate head versus the original head? So it's technically, so to speak, a different design of Kong. And, sorry, putting that down, you get alternate hands, which are going to be more splayed out, more open, almost like, hey bud, can you give me my money? So that's pretty good. What? Were you expecting something else? Well, that's it. That is all the NECA comes with. Yeah, that was NECA's, that would ultimately be the NECA Kong's biggest weakness, the lack thereof accessories. Because when you really boil it down, there was really no reason why it shouldn't have come with the chain shackles or maybe a mini Andara. Because let's really, maybe a mini Andara was like not in the license because of the public domain stuff. But let's be real here. I know people are going to mention, oh, but there's alternate versions of NECA Kong. You're right. But there's also other versions of the Mezco Kong. Black and white version that comes with even more accessories. And plus, this is only between these two specifically. I don't have the black and white version, and while I do have the alternate versions of the NECA, this isn't what we're comparing here. We're comparing the original release Mezco versus the original release NECA. And even though they technically come with each other's accessories, and there you can interchange them, at least the chain shackles and the Andorra figure, you cannot say that the Mezco accessories are less than the NECA just because the NECA has more repaints. Vanilla release, it's 3 accessories versus 7. So Mezco wins this point. Next up, we're going to go over round 4, size. And here's the thing. There's obviously a huge size difference between the two. In fact, I would even say, like, as far as overall size, it's very debatable. Except it's not. The Mezco is a 6-inch figure. It's able to go with practically all of your 6-inch figures, whether it be Godzilla, other Kongs, or maybe another line in the 6-inch scale. But for me, I'm focusing on Godzilla and Kong because that's what I collect. Maybe you collect Marvel Legends. Who knows? Anyway, taking in a basic 6-inch figure, we're going to bring in Destroyer because he's the closest one I have in proximity with me. Even though the Playmates Destroyer is a relatively smaller figure, this Kong still looks better with this Destroyer than the NECA does. The NECA is meant to scale with its own line and its own line only. As far as like actual figure scale goes, because it's a bit taller in the 7 to 8 inch scale, you don't get as much display options as this guy compared to the other NECA figures. Even the NECA Godzillas don't really scale with it. The only NECA Godzilla that really scales with it is the 2003. A version that never even met Kong, at least what we know of. So, even if you want to say, oh well, it's meant to be on its own thing, sure, but there's more figures on the market that would scale with the Mezco. So, Mezco wins this point. Next up, what I want to talk about is price. Even though the Mezco is a decently affordable figure, it retails for about $40. 35 to 40 comfortably. while the NECA is about $20 to $25. We're going to say 25, which ironically, as I say it, the runtime is now 25 minutes. I'm going to be 100% honest. I would be more inclined to purchase a cheaper figure than the more expensive one, so NECA would win that point. Keep my word, talking about retail, not aftermarket, because aftermarket's all over the place. But what good is price if I can't even get my hands on the thing? Well, that's where availability comes in. Mezco's, I have not seen at any major retailers. Maybe has, but I haven't seen it. And I've been through a lot of retailers. The NECA has been about at every retailer for a few years now. Targets, Walmart, Toys R Us, if your country still carries it. It's been pretty much not, I don't want to say mass produced, but more produced on a massive scale that accommodates more retailers than the Mezco. If you want to talk about online retailers, maybe the two are at an equilibrium. But when it comes to IRL, in real life, in person, the NECA would win this pretty much hands down. And the last thing I also want to talk about is packaging. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the Mezco's box anymore. But basically would have came in this big, almost very stylish looking box with a display back, has Mezco Kong Skull Island. You can see all the accessories and the Kong figure itself, and it looks nice. While the NECA has the standard 5-panel, opens like a trap door. You can see the figure inside, close back up, you get cover art, and it looks nice. Personally, I prefer the NECA box, but as far as convenience sake goes, both of them are pretty equal. Although the NECA's is a bit smaller than that of the Mezco's, from memory, it's not that smaller. So I'm going to actually call this one an equilibrium, a tie. And so we pretty much come to the end of this comparison. Let's tally up the scores. Sculpting paint went to the NECA by a smidge, articulation went to the NECA, size and accessories went to the Mezco, price went to the NECA, availability went to the NECA, and packaging went to an equilibrium. It's 3 to 5, counting the ties point for each. The NECA wins this matchup. Now, let me just get some things clear. I do personally think that there are some ways that the Mezco is better than the NECA. I like its weight more. Like, this thing weighs like a solid brick. This thing is a featherweight by comparison. But when you really just boil it down, I personally think the NECA is the better executed figure. Not saying the Mezco's bad at all. In fact, it's got a lot of things going for it. But I personally just think that when you compare it on a blow-by-blow basis, the NECA wins this matchup. Now, maybe this isn't the outcome you wanted. Maybe you like the Mezco more than the NECA. Maybe you despise the NECA and want the Mezco. In fact, I would honestly say buy both. They're different Kongs. They both belong on the shelf. But really, I feel like the choice is down to you. Guess what? You are the winner. Because why? You get to choose. So really, this video is just meant to give you an idea of which Kong is which, and I guess which one is just overall a better buy. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you guys liked it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.